Issue 64. Strangely, a robot hands Fry a newspaper that he calls the Daily World Wide Web. Fry thanks him, and like a jerk, Bender doesn't tip the little robot. And Fry's not much better because there's no indication that he went out the door after Bender left and tipped him anyways. Instead, he doesn't care and tells everyone that the internet's here. And he opens a little magazine that projects a bunch of hologram screens above the table. The future sure is different. It turns out the one in charge of the internet is the robot devil of all people. He tells a robot wanting to know how to torture leaf blowers to merely wake them up at 5 AM. He doesn't put in the efforts because he's focused on trying to post something snarky on every message board in the universe. He's one of those jerks on GameFAQs boards that just makes fun of anyone asking for help. As I wonder why the crew didn't always have the internet, we see embarrassing footage of Mom working out. She's told to let the rotation of the planet spin the wheels of the exercise bike, and it does it too fast, sending off her wig. Why would there still be bald women wearing wigs in the future? They'd have cured that or written it out of the genetic code. They're already working on a cure for baldness this century. Farnsworth thinks she looks nice because he's vain. As I think about how the crew being distracted by inconsequential stuff like this is not what should be the case in every story. Leela sees Spiro stealing towels from the Watergate Hotel for Nixon. Then Calculon does a commercial that was only supposed to be seen in one galaxy for adult robot diapers. And he expects people to believe nobody notices them when he doesn't wear clothes over them in his movies. You'd think robots would have a better solution for oil leakage because they have metal skin. This is like an interdimensional Cable episode. Fry fortunately feels bad for watching these. Farnsworth says uncaringly that if you don't want humiliation, don't do anything humiliating, as if that's possible. And fortunately, he gets humiliated too as a punishment. He was spying on a celebrity in the bushes when he was at a restaurant. The reason Farnsworth is being embarrassed is that he didn't send money to someone's bank account. So this kind of thing is going to happen every week. But Farnsworth didn't agree because he wanted to keep surfing in his dream. Fry makes himself surprisingly useful by finding a hidden blackmail camera effortlessly, right on the shelf behind Bender's hidden blackmail camera. Bender fortunately explains that he quit months ago because realistically, all of the footage he got of his friends was too boring. Amy says they're all over the place, and Farnsworth says that all of these cameras have been transmitting signals of them to Neptune. I wish they just said it was a different Neptune from ours, because it never makes any sense when we know it's a gas planet. Leela says it must be Santa, and she talks repetitively, which is stilted and out of character. He says Robot Santa is using that knowledge to discover he was naughty and using it for blackmail. What took him so long? Wouldn't he have always known who was naughty? He thinks everyone's naughty anyway, so why would he care about this footage? Farnsworth had the smart idea to camouflage the ship for his crew. Fry gets told to identify himself, and despite saying before saying Dasher, he somehow believed. I guess that guy he's talking to doesn't know Dasher's voice. Then he's asked for the password. Bender says the Easter Bunny's a jerk, and lucky for him, because the guy likes what he said, he tells them they're allowed to land. So that was a clever thing of Bender to say. The ship lands on the snow, and Leela somehow waited until they left the ship to tell her crew that they need to erase all of Robot Santa's computer files. What if they got overheard? To be fair, he might have hidden cameras in their ship too, so it'd be safer to say this right after leaving it, in that case. They go to the Xmas village and get worried about the little drummer bot spotting them. It's always so interesting to see a Santa that's a villain, but it's redundant to have them here again. Leela says that Santa's security system is triggered by nasty thoughts, so she needs someone innocent to pass through and deactivate the alarms. Robot Santa always has nasty thoughts, so wouldn't it be triggered all the time? Wouldn't he get sick of that? They see Zoidberg making a snow angel and send him past the guards to snip the wires. Sure, it's convenient for the heroes that the robots can be shut down like this when you'd think they'd have their own internal power sources. An EMP would have made more sense to take them out all at once. Fry congratulates Zoidberg, and Leela says all Zoidberg needs to do is shut down the main alarm system just past the mess hall. So he had impure thoughts about a shrimp ring that triggers the alarm. I don't get it, just because he wants to eat, that triggers the alarm? The crew all get knocked out by fruitcakes and wake up in chimney socks. They get talked to by the elf in charge of recording all the bad things everyone on Earth has done. And he's gonna program the computer to lie that the crew is out to destroy Robot Santa. He says he's gonna take Robot Santa's place, just to be as bad as him anyways, so what's the point? He's been blackmailing the rich for money to fund a coup. He says Robot Santa will trust him even more once he shows him the defeated Earthlings who came for him. Zoidberg says smartly that he's not an Earthling technically, and offers him help filling out death certificates because he's not a good doctor. But we only see him deal with the crew as his patients. The elf with the dumb name Wiki says they'll tell Robot Santa he lit a fire under them when they climbed down the chimney. And then Robot Santa goes behind them because Bender used his Wi-Fi antenna to text them because he used to work for him and still has his private number. Robot Santa promotes him and tells him to pick up a red suit and report to the Amazonia shopping mall, which is considered a demotion in his eyes. So he only said he's promoting him to get his hopes up. So we see Wiki being sat on as a mall Santa by Amazon women. The characters were dumb enough to eat the food Robot Santa gave them. Fry thanks him, and he tells them that the penalty for trespassing is death. But because bullshit, he conveniently gives them a 30-second head start before he'll try to shoot them, which is something the other M comic did with Espio. This is the kind of writing an infamous fan comic would have. They run away and want to use Wiki's computer to call for help. Bender says he'll hold the door shut, and Fry wastes valuable time updating his Facebook status before hitting send all to make sure someone on Earth gets this message. Robot Santa gets let in by Bender because Bender ate rum balls that messed with his programming, which is confusing because alcohol doesn't get robots drunk. It makes sure they don't get drunk. Fry just sent the entire dark secret file to every email address. The ensuing chaos would risk destroying the Earth, somehow. So Leela says they'll have to team up to beat the email signal to Earth. How could they beat an email signal to Earth? Wouldn't it be instant in the future? He agrees because otherwise he's out of a job, even though there's no reason he couldn't move on to bother another planet. I guess he's only programmed to bother Earth, and it's all about following his programming too well. But would he really just sit there and do nothing his whole life without Earth? Robot Santa says that once they hit deep space, he'll pull his ship the rest of the way. Bender cheers, enjoying himself and making the scene more fun. They quickly make it home, and Farnsworth says they need a receiver that'll be powerful enough to absorb every email. Robot Santa's parents removed his antenna for religious reasons, and having it removed doesn't stop him from getting another one. Farnsworth tells Bender to hold wires to super boost his reception. How would Robot Santa even have parents if he was specifically made to be a Santa? Bender says he knows every dark secret and can blackmail everyone. Then he says he doesn't have to because he knows everyone's credit card numbers. He says he could take over the world or let out every secret just for fun. Fry says he's gonna fix this problem right in front of him. And then somehow Bender believes him when he says he's just gonna help him celebrate. He asks Robot Santa for rum balls, and Bender gets fed 1,000 of them. For no reason, Bender doesn't remember anyone's secrets anymore, and he was kept too busy eating rum balls to think to write any credit card information down. Robot Santa says that for saving the world in his job, he'll give the crew a free pass this Xmas, and goes home. Futurama Comic, Issue 65. Bender dives and leaves the ocean and isn't scared of the shark behind him that wouldn't bother trying to bite a robot like him because he doesn't look like food. Fry says night swimming is dangerous and explains that somehow he survived the shock from his TV falling in his pool. There's a gag where he shows he has brain damage by saying the wrong word twice, when most of the time he doesn't say the wrong word. And it's pretending he's always been like that. Leela wonders why it's night at noon. It took her this long? The crew goes home, and Nixon tells them that he secretly sold the sun 3 years ago to save Earth from going bankrupt, and since then they've been renting the sun from another planet. why does the law let you sell or rent the sun? But Spiro forgot to send last month's rent. The new Holdemites place a solar shield in front of the sun unless they pay the rent by noon. They'll close in a force field and take away all its heat. That sounds like a declaration of war. Farnsworth says Planet Express has just been told to deliver a rent check to the solar system center. Somehow they need to stop at a fuel station because somehow Earth's constant darkness kept Nibbler in such a deep sleep that he hasn't created morning fuel yet. They still have a bunch of fuel saved up. And she explains that she doesn't want to wake something so cute. Why did she bring him on the mission? I assume the reason she usually doesn't is that it's dangerous most of the time, and she assumed it was safe this time. Much like Qbert and Dwight, Nibbler only exists in the universe in the rare stories where the writer remembers that he exists. Leela trusts Fry and Bender to pay for her to fuel up the ship at the gas station. And what took them so long is that Bender accidentally married the cash register somehow. He's told that because the robot minister performed the wedding ceremony backwards, the divorce is finalized and Bender lost everything. This is another forced joke. Leela gets to the aliens just a few minutes late, and they insist on being picky and not letting Leela pay the rent. So they refuse to turn the sun back on, and want to keep the force fields there for as long as they feel like. It's their annual global holiday, so they can't work until winter is declared. Their whole world somehow holds a giant poker tournament, instead of having gambling be illegal. And at the end, the winner gets whatever they want. That's silly too. What if the winner asks to sleep with the president? I have no reason to care about these aliens because they're evil enough to be fine with letting a planet die from lack of sunlight. So I don't have the patience to be forgiving of how blatantly unrealistic their planet and apathy is, just for the sake of a joke. She says she never played poker before anyways, so she's allowed to participate because they love new, inexperienced players who will probably lose. They need an entrance fee, and Fry says they'll use the rent check. Leela isn't sure about it, even though since they only brought that for money, that's clearly their only option. Especially since Bender was planning on wasting it on stuff for himself and dooming his planet and himself anyways. I don't know why Bender can't go get something of Farnsworth's for money. Farnsworth refuses to turn up the heat when it's cold. Zoidberg's face icicles keep falling into the hot cocoa, and Farnsworth apologizes and says they need to conserve all the energy they can to power super lasers aimed at the Earth's core to increase the internal heat of the Earth, and maybe give them a few more days of life. And somehow Wernstrom wants to freeze the Earth quickly because he somehow thinks that's his only chance. So he's seeding the clouds to make it snow harder. This only happens to make Farnsworth say he couldn't imagine a stupider plan. And Fry enters the rent check in the poker tournament. And I'm wondering why Dupe isn't taking this force field solar shield thing as a declaration of war and doing anything it can to get rid of it. Bender's told he can use his probability program from Playbot to count cards. He loses everything at the casino somehow, and the alien sarcastically apologizes and says their cards get randomly generated after each hand, so counting cards doesn't work. Why the fuck does he bother saying sorry if he doesn't mean it and has nothing to gain? The aliens of the species are all motionless and nonchalant about screwing people over, and it takes me out of it. It's intrusive that the narration text box stutters. Farnsworth gets congratulated for replacing the street lamps with sun lamps. Why didn't he knock out Wernstrom or something to stop his plan? Wernstrom gave up his plan because of impatience, just to say he converted all the water in the reservoir into liquid nitrogen. This is not getting the character at all. I don't remember him being insane and evil to the point of making Farnsworth look rational. Scruffy ended up frozen, and Leela says it's time for a weapon she doesn't like to use, and shows up wearing a stunning red dress. The aliens don't find her dress distracting, not because it's confirmed that they're all emotionless, or even because she has one eye, but because they're all biologically programmed to serve their one queen, and they're not into her either. Can Dupe just start a war with them already? They'll pick a fight with any harmless species, but not these wimps. Wernstrom keeps disappointing me with his ridiculousness, saying he just invented a freeze ray, and Farnsworth fires a portable steam heater at him to warm the city back up. Why won't Wernstrom get arrested? I like that it's fogging up his glasses because that makes sense. For once. Finally, someone thinks to arrest Wernstrom, but he freezes the cops and somehow says this is something they'll thank him for. And somehow an alien's dumb enough to walk between Wernstrom and Farnsworth and complain about them. So he gets shot by them. And he has an unrealistically deadpan reaction instead of just screaming, and continuing to have their attention in the next panels. Or passing out immediately, which is probably what he did. Wernstrom realistically does know that his plan won't work. But when he's frozen everyone else, he'll keep the heat for himself because he's always been the only person on Earth that he liked anyways. That at least makes sense for him, but I don't remember him being the type to have big evil plans. The only thing that was memorable about Wernstrom was Farnsworth saying his name resentfully. He plans on renaming the planet after himself. At least now his motive makes sense, but he should have said this in the first place. Leela loses the game really easily and says she lost her dignity in between her lying and begging to stay in the game. So the one who's gonna win the poker game inevitably is gonna be Fry of all people, just because he's the main character. So he ends up getting nearly all of the chips of everyone on the planet, and it's confirmed by a machine that he's just getting dumb luck. It's obviously believable because people get lucky in real life. I just don't find it to be an interesting subplot. I don't know the rules of poker. Fry wins, and Alien says Fry's a holy man here because all their laws and religions are based on the power of luck. He somehow decides to waste time trying to walk on water, and the Earthlings get their sun back. Scorpion thaws and is somehow instantly fine and says he feels like the time he somehow fell asleep in a carbonate factory. Earth owns the sun again, and Bender was smart enough to steal their force field generator. Wernstrom still plans on using a freeze grenade. Fry wonders how the force field generator works, and Leela's smart enough to worry that it'll break it. He turns it on, and it conveniently generates a force field that's only big enough to protect his friends. Even though the last time it generated a force field, we know it was way bigger than that. So it uses the incredibly useful device, bounces the grenade back at Wernstrom to freeze him, and we see the lifeguard sitting on a chair floating over the ocean, closer to it than most lifeguards, but still doing nothing to shoot the octopus that grabbed someone's leg. This story was about the crew going to Robot Santa's workshop because people are being humiliated by embarrassing videos of themselves from hidden cameras, a pretty dark concept, and that plan was being carried out by a rogue elf for money. Bender saves the day by calling Robot Santa on his antenna, and they team up to get to Earth before it'll be destroyed by the chaos of a mass email Fry sent. Why do they think it'll be destroyed, instead of everyone just being embarrassed and not wanting to look at each other for a little while? Like in Malcolm in the Middle in that one episode. Bender absorbs the information and learns everyone's secrets, and then somehow getting fed rum balls damages his programming enough to take care of that. He should have known better than to trust Fry, because Fry just said in front of him that he has to fix this mess. And Bender should have known better than to tell everyone what he was planning for no reason. It was lazy and boring to have a plot on Robot Santa's world again. The last time they were on the world, it seemed like it was more interesting. More stuff was done with the setting. The characters might as well have gotten captured on purpose to get to Robot Santa faster, because everything they did was rendered pointless when Zoidberg thought about eating shrimp. This boring story was about the Earth getting colder and dark because Nixon took out a mortgage on the sun for money, and someone was late on paying the rent. It's such a hilariously silly and cynical premise that's probably why I stopped caring right away. I wonder if it's realistic for everyone to not die right away from the sun being blotted out so long. Somehow the aliens are too sociopathic to let Leela pay the rent and get their son back because she was minutes late, thanks to Bender having a possible problem. This was just an excuse for the crew to have to engage in a poker tournament. But I had no reason to care because it was obvious they were going to be written to win, and only by dumb luck, because it's just a gambling game. We never saw the full game for either of the characters. It just cuts to them losing, so I wish we only saw Fry do it. Because Farnsworth's plot was a lot more interesting. Well, Leela and Bender were at least trying to use strategy. At least it was interesting seeing why Leela and Bender failed. But it was awkward seeing Leela embarrass herself. Farnsworth's plot is more interesting, but it's still silly. Wernstrom has ridiculous out-of-character moments by going crazy and trying to freeze over the whole planet by himself with techniques that are only going to work on the small scale, while Farnsworth gets to look like a hero for once fighting against them.